everybody and welcome to my channel. I'm Mads and today is going to be a very fun video. If you don't know, I'm currently rereading the Heroes of Olympus series, and rereading the series and rereading the Percy Jackson series just makes me think about all the other books that I kind of want to reread. And sometimes it's so hard because I have all these amazing books just waiting for me on my shelves, just waiting for me to read. And yet there are these other books that are kind of just looking at me and wanting me to read them again because I've already read them and I loved them and I kind of want to read them again. So today I'm going to be sharing with you all the books that I kind of want to reread at some point. Not necessarily this year, not necessarily anytime soon, but there are just books that I kind of just want to reread for one reason or another. I have my amazing Chai with me here today because it is freezing out and I need some comfort. So let's dive into it, and I can't wait to share all these potential rereads with you guys. So these aren't going to be in any particular order because I don't ever feel like ordering them and I don't know what I would order them by. So I'm just going to grab a book off my pile and, tell you about it. So first up, I do have The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakavic. This one I read, oh my gosh, I don't even remember when I read this. I was definitely in high school, probably my senior year in high school. So when I read this trilogy, it was one of my very first times tabbing a book. And it's so funny looking back at the scenes that I've tabbed and just opening them up, especially because I don't remember what all the tabs stand for. I think purple were just quotes, iconic moments. Blue was sad. Pink was lovey, romantic, cute. And then orange, orange is funny, question mark? I love how in this one there's only one pink tab, and that was when Nikki was talking about Eric. It's been a little bit since I read these books, and I low-key just want to reread them and maybe just do a full annotation, maybe kind of take out these tabs, or maybe even leave them in there and just add annotations and thoughts or something. I don't know, but I just really want to reread this series, and I see things about this all over Twitter literally all the time, especially from one person I follow. She tweets about it all the time and it just makes me want to dive back into it. And the fact that Nora is releasing a fourth book in the series at some point, that just makes me want to reread it more. I need to reread the first three before I read the fourth one. It's a rule. It's been 3 years since I've read these, so now I need to obviously reread them before the fourth one comes out. So that's gonna happen. If you don't know, the Foxhole Court is a part of the All for the Game series, following this made-up game called Xe, which is kind of like lacrosse, and this one character who really loves playing Xe, but he's also happens to be the son of this big mafia dude, and he's running from him, and he ends up joining this college Xe team instead of running away, and a whole bunch of drama happens. Stuff goes down, guys. If you want a sports story mixed with a mafia story with found family and queer representation, this is for you. However, look at any and every trigger warning before going into this book, because this book does get kind of heavy. This series is just kind of heavy. It has some really intense moments that are not for the faint of heart, and I definitely need everybody to look at trigger warnings before they go into this book. Please make sure you do that. But I still love this book, and that sounds really weird to say after saying please look at the trigger warnings of this book, but I really do love this series, and the first one isn't necessarily my favorite, but I do love, I forget which one it is. Actually, I don't remember which one I love the most, so that's another reason to reread it, is to figure out which one I love the most. So that's definitely high priority on my reread list. Okay, next, I really need to reread Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda. Guys, okay, I first read this book when I was maybe a sophomore in high school, which was 4 years ago, first of all. That's crazy. This was the very first queer book that I ever read, and it was the very first queer movie that I ever watched, and I just loved this book. And so I really need to reread it now, especially now that I own it. and I have my own copy. This book just has such a special place in my heart. I just really, really need to read this book and experience it all again. I would probably just go feral for it, honestly. I wouldn't recognize any faults because of how much this book just means to me and how much I loved reading it the first time. I've read it 2, maybe 3 times actually. So it wouldn't be my first time rereading it, but it would be my first time reading it in a very, very long time. So I need to reread this book. It's a need. This follows Simon, and he is gay, but nobody knows he's gay. No one in his friends or his family, nobody. But he randomly starts emailing this one guy from this anonymous message they post on their school's Tumblr site, and he kind of just falls in love with this guy he's emailing, but he doesn't know who he's emailing. And so throughout this book, he's kind of figuring out not only himself, but also who is he emailing, like what is his place, does he want to come out, like all this stuff. And it's so good. There is a movie out, Love, Simon. I love that movie. I love that movie so much. So I need to reread this and then rewatch the movie, obviously. The next one I'm going to talk about I find kind of funny because I literally just read this book. I mean, like, I read this book at the end of December, and sometimes I just think about it and I'm like, I need to reread that, and I'm definitely going to annotate it when I reread it because it needs to be annotated. That is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This one was my very top favorite book of 2023, and this book is just so... I love this book. I love this book so much. And so I just really need to relive everything, obviously. And of course, when I annotate, I'm gonna probably go feral for every single moment that Clem and Ewan have, because they're just perfect. And nobody is allowed to tell me any different. Okay, they are perfect. I love them. I want them to be together forever, and I just need to relive this feeling that this book gave me. So this is definitely on my reread list. And honestly, it probably went on my reread list the second after I closed it because I knew I needed to read it again. And it doesn't help that I literally read it in like a day. So it's like it went by so quick that I need to just like go back and just take it all in again. The next one is literally not going to surprise anybody if you've watched any of my past videos. And that is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I kind of reread this book like every year now. Ever since I read it the first time, I just have reread it over and over. And literally after the first time I read this book, I think I ended up rereading it 3 months later. I adore this book on every level of my being, and I need to reread it every single year. I actually have 3 copies of this. This one is the one that Elsa annotated and got me for my birthday, and so I'm planning on rereading maybe even my personal copy and annotating it in August of this year, because August 11th is not only my birthday, but it is also the movie's birthday because that's when it came out. So I think August is now the perfect time to read it. It's also like summery and sunny, and when I inevitably go into a spiral about maybe possibly never loving a book this much ever again in my entire life, I can be picked up by the sunshine. So I can't wait to reread this book, whether it's Elsa's copy, my own copy, whether I'm annotating it or not. I'm gonna reread that book. Speaking of Casey McQuiston though, I also need to reread One Last Stop. I haven't read this book since I first read it, and that was last winter, my freshman year of college. Again, Elsa sent me this book and annotated it for me, and it was like amazing. I loved her annotations, and she had so many tabs in there too, and I honestly loved just running my hands over them. Elsa was right as always when it comes to books that I might love, because I adored reading this book. And one aspect that I really, really loved about it was not only the romance, but the found family that is in this book just grabbed my heart, and I kind of just want to relive them again. And I do love the romance. I love the whole plot in this one, and it's just so amazing. Red, White, and Royal Blue is a little bit well known. I didn't really say anything about that one. That one involves the son of the first female president of the United States falling in love with the Prince of England, and this one follows our main character, August, as she meets a girl on a train, falls in love, and then realizes that this girl on the train happens to be from the 70s, and she's kind of stuck on the train, and she wants to get her off the train, and is also like actively falling in love. So it's super cute, super amazing. The queer representation in this book is just like chef's kiss. I adore this book, and so I just need to relive it. I may or may not really love Casey McQuiston, in case you Can't tell. Another book that I really want to reread, but I'm kind of hesitant to reread, is The King of Scars duology by Leigh Bardugo. And here's the thing, I wouldn't reread the Shadow and Bone series. Like, it's a good series, not my favorite. I don't think I would make myself reread it. And I have reread Six of Crows quite a bit. I don't feel the urge right now to reread it, but I would love to just like relive these two books because I love them and I love Nikolai and Zoya and Nina. They're literally my 3 favorite characters in all of the Grishaverse, and I just would love to just see their story again. I just need to get as much of them as I can, so I just need to reread them. But I'm hesitant because 1, the second book is so very long and it took me forever to get through it. And 2, this duology is very politics heavy and kind of more focuses on politics than Nikolai and Zoya's relationship. So the question is, could I handle all the politics and the battle to get to those moments that I adore? And I don't know. I'm really not sure. So maybe when the possible 3rd book of whatever series comes out will give me the motivation to reread these 2. Honestly, just for the 3 main characters, nothing else. I just really love the 3 main characters and they just make me really happy, and seeing them in the show just like brought so much joy to my heart. And then when the show got canceled, I was really sad because that meant that I could not ever see my Nikolai and Zoyalai plotline develop in the show. And it hurt me and it made me want to go feral on every single level. So really all I have are the very few edits that people could make from the very few scenes that we got of them in the show. Hi, are you joining me today? This is my chai, you can't have that. I can't leave my mug in its usual spot because Luna will knock it over. You're naughty. Everybody, this is Luna. In case you haven't seen my previous videos, she likes to pop in every now and then. Enjoy her in the background. Anyways, another book that I want to reread, not because I loved it so much the first time I read it, but because it has been so long since I read it for the first time, and I didn't actually love it the first time that I read it, but I feel like now that I'm older, I would like it a little bit more. But that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And I know what you're gonna say, like, what do you mean you didn't like it the first time? I just didn't love it when I read it the first time. Granted, I was like a 4th grader, and then I think I read it again when I was in 7th grade. Still didn't love it, but I read the rest of the series. And so I think I just need to reread it now that I'm older. You know, I have a different perspective. I honestly think that I would like this book a lot more now. And another reason I kind of want to reread it is because The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out. And at first, I wasn't going to read it. Okay, I was like, I know it's really popular, but I just don't know if I would want to read that. And then I keep seeing these clips and edits from the movie, and I'm like, you know, like I kind of want to read that. So maybe, possibly, I'll add Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes maybe to my wish list, or just like a list of books that I need to buy whenever I buy books again. And then maybe I could read that one and then reread these 2 books, because technically that one's the prequel. I think that would be a good way to do it. So I think that's my plan. Whenever I get to reading A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I don't know if I would read it until I have it or see if the library has it. I don't even know if our library would have it right now. But whenever I do read that, I think afterwards I'm gonna read these books. This will be reread at some point in my life. Okay, so the next book I want to reread is a trilogy, and that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I feel like rereading a mystery series feels a little bit different because obviously it's not going to be the same as the first time you read it, but I would honestly probably just reread it for the characters, like Pip and Robbie. I loved them. I loved them so much. And I think it would be kind of fun to reread the series and pick up on all the clues that are kind of left throughout the book. And so I honestly think that would be kind of fun. And also I just love Pip and Robbie. And I would love to reread As Good as Dead because I adored As Good as Dead. And that book gave me like a visceral reaction and it made me want to scream and like rip my hair out. So I am always very tempted to just reread these books, and that's the main reason why. The characters and As Good as Dead. Like, obviously I will know everything that happens, so it'll take away that aspect of the book, but I hope I could still enjoy it without that, like, what's the word? Suspense is the word. Even without that suspense of not knowing what's happening next, I would hope I would still enjoy this series. So that's definitely on the list. And then kind of similar is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This one's entirely for the characters. I adore these characters so much. I actually have reread this book maybe a couple times before since first reading it. And every time, like, yeah, I know everything that happens. And even when I read it the first time, I guessed who did it by the end. But I just really love the characters. And I would love any chance to just relive their story with them. And I would even kind of consider rereading the next 2 books in the series, even if they aren't my favorite. Like, this one is my favorite in the series, but just for them. If I ever need like a comfort found family book, this is definitely one I can turn to, which is weird to think about considering this is literally like a murder mystery, but the found family in this book just hits me so hard. It was one of the first found families that I really read, and it kind of helped me acknowledge or know my love for found family trope. So it definitely just has a special place in my heart, and I would just love to get anything regarding them. This one follows these 5 teenagers who go into detention and only 4 walk out. These 4 that do walk out are all kind of under investigation for the murder of the 5th kid that was in detention, and things just kind of unravel from there. It's super insane, and I adore this book. Another book I want to reread is actually one, again, that I read in 2023. I think I read this one in July of 2023, I want to say, maybe even August. It was in the summer, I know that. And that is The House on Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. TJ Klune is releasing a sequel to this book. Honestly, he's probably only doing it because of how loved this book is, and I'm not going to be too mad about it because I adored this book. And really, it's very low stakes, very little plot, kind of a cozy fantasy, but the found family in this book had me screaming. It's a super whimsical story, like kind of weird and fantastical, a little bit of an urban fantasy, but more on the fantasy aspect, and it just made me really happy to read. These characters just made me really happy, and I think this book would make a really cute movie, like a cute animated movie. If you've read this book, please tell me you see that vision, because I would love to watch that. But this book just has the cutest found family in it that I think I've ever read. And it has like a legitimate found family. Like, it's about this orphanage of kids and their caretaker and this guy coming from basically Child Protective Services to investigate this orphanage to make sure everything's running okay. And him just kind of finding this like family in this already found family. And it's just the sweetest book ever, and I would love to reread it. And I think the second book coming out is a wonderful excuse to reread it, and I think I would save my reread until that one does come out. Like, reread this one, feel those feelings again, and remember how much I love them, and then jump into the second one, and then get all these new things. Like, that's the perfect scenario. And I can't wait for that one to come out. I don't know even if it has an announcement for the release date or anything like that, but it's just been talked about, and so obviously it's on my radar, and I can't wait to one day read it and just be happy and feel alive. Next is a book that I haven't actually read since I first read it, and the first time I read it was my sophomore year in high school. So again, it's been like 4 years since I read this book, and I just really need to read it again. And that is Again But Better by Christine Riccio. If you don't know, Christine Riccio is a booktuber, and she is known as Poland's Banana Books on BookTube. And she's kind of like one of the OG booktubers who actually gave me the inspiration to start this channel, because I wanted to start this channel since I first started watching her videos 4 years ago. I just really want to read this book for so many different reasons, and one of them being the fact that this does take place in college. Like, this girl is in college and she goes on a foreign exchange program to London and is kind of trying to figure out what she wants out of her own life instead of what her parents just want from her. And it's such an amazing book about finding yourself in college. And it's kind of vaguely based off of Christine's own experience of doing a foreign exchange program in London and kind of learning how to live a little bit instead of just like being a little hermit in your apartment and never going out and spending all your nights reading. So yeah, I think it would be wonderful to reread this for that mainly. I think reading this now that I am in this position where I'm in college and I'm kind of an introvert, I don't really go out much, and I think it would just be like a wonderful story to read at this point in my life instead of just a cute love story when I was a sophomore in high school. Like, it's gonna have a different impact now than it did back then. And of course, I did love their love story. Like, I love Shane and Pilot, and I would just like love to get the chance to relive their story with them again. It's a great book, and I would love to reread it. Next is actually a book that I read around the same time I read Again But Better, and that is All the Right Places by Jennifer Niven. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. I was never entirely sure. But this book is so tragic and honestly made me want to sob my eyes out, but I couldn't because I was literally in class when I was finishing this book, when I got to the part that makes everybody kind of just hurt. And this book follows Finch and Violet just lost her sister and is kind of just like withdrawing from the world, and she gets partnered up with Finch on a project and has to spend time with him. And Finch is like kind of hard to describe, but he does go through a lot of mental health issues, and they kind of find like this haven in each other and this adventure for one another, and it's just this romantic story, and it has a lot of great like messages about mental health, and it's just like, it's so, I don't know how to find the words to describe this book, but I loved it when I first read it, and I would love to read it again, especially now that I have more of an awareness for mental health, and I've definitely gone through like my own sort of struggles with mental health. I think this would be a really cool book to reread, and I would just love to get their story again and see if I see anything different in the story, see if I relate to anything different. And I think it would just be kind of crazy. Maybe I would even annotate it. I think annotating would be kind of cool too. There is definitely so much to this book that could be annotated. And I think this book will destroy me when I reread it, and I might sob hysterically. Because I didn't get a chance to actually cry the first time I read it. So maybe the second time I can actually cry about it, which is wonderful. Next up is a series that I would kind of love to reread. I just loved reading it the first time, and there's no other reason. I kind of want to reread The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer. I love Marissa Meyer, and she's probably one of my favorite YA authors, and I've read The Lunar Chronicles and the Renegade series. I do love the Renegade series, but I don't want to reread that one as much as I do this series, because the found family in this book and the way it develops is just like adorable. I love them, and I just love some of the main characters like Cinder, Cress, Winter. I would just love to reread their stories and see them all come together yet again. Yes, I would know everything that happens in it, but it also has been 3 years since I read this last, and I think it would just be really fun to have that chance to reread it again. I love them so much, and I would just love to get more of them. Especially like Cinder and Kai, like Cress, and oh my gosh, Thorn. I would read this entire series just for Thorn. I think it would be a really fun series to reread. So that is definitely a potential reread for me at some point. I don't know when that's gonna be, but it is definitely being considered actively always. And then the last book is actually one I don't have with me. I used to own it. It is now in another form in the household, but I kind of really want to reread The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, and I don't know what egged this on, but a couple months ago, I just got this really strong urge to reread that series. And I never actually ended up finishing it. I got to the second book in the trilogy, so I was one short of finishing it, and I just never got around to it. So I think that's one wonderful excuse to reread it. But also, I really love YA dystopians. Like, they're just so much fun, and this one definitely has this like apocalyptic thing happening with it, and it's such a cool story, and I think I would just love a chance to reread it and see what I think about it now, because I do remember really liking it when I was younger. I honestly think that I would still like it today, obviously in a little bit of a different way than I did the first time, but I do think I would still like it, and I think it'll just be like a fun book to reread. So I really do want to reread that one, and that one has a potential, honestly, being reread this year. I don't know when, but the temptation is just getting stronger and stronger. So I'm gonna give in at some point. That and rereading the Percy Jackson series helped spark this video, because I've been just thinking about all the books that I want to reread, and I look at my shelf and I'm like, oh my gosh, I would totally reread that. And it's just this mindset that I've been in lately, And so I just like wanted to share with you guys the books that I am very strongly considering rereading, even though I know I have so many books that I need to get to, like so many. But sometimes you just kind of have to stop and relive the ones that you have read and that you really loved, or ones that you kind of just want to try again with now that you're older. So those are all the books that I want to reread. Let me know if you want any like vlogs or content with me rereading any of these books. I would love to give that to you guys, and especially because I never have done a reading type of vlog. I've only done one vlog on my channel, so I would love to explore that. And so let me know if you guys would like that with any of these books, or honestly any other books. Let me know down in the comments books that you would love to reread, or if you feel the same way about any of these books. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you all next week. Bye!